She thought he was just a wandering cowboy, but he carried a past that could change everything. Looks like you need a miracle, or someone who knows engines. Claire turned sharply, nearly dropping the wrench. Dust swirled in the air, and steam rose from the truck's engine like a warning. She narrowed her eyes and saw, through the amber haze of the sunset, a tall man covered in dirt, sitting on a black horse that looked like it had stepped out of an old movie. He wore a weathered hat pulled low over his eyes and a denim shirt as worn as the road behind him. Claire straightened up and held the tool firmly in her hands. "Depends on what you're offering," she said. He gave a sideways smile. "Didn't bring miracles, but I know horses and engines." Claire hesitated. The sun was going down, her phone was dead, and the ranch was still far off. Coyotes howled in the distance. Engine overheated, or maybe the alternator's toast. "If you don't mind, I can take a look." She nodded cautiously. He dismounted with ease, like someone who had all the time in the world. Pulling a rag from his saddlebag, he leaned over the engine with the familiarity of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "What's your name?" she asked, arms crossed. Jack Whitmore," he replied without looking up from the gears. She recognized the name, but said nothing. Moments later, he stood up. "Radiator's busted. You'll need a tow." Claire sighed. "My ranch is about 10 kilometers west. Got another truck there. If you help me tow this one, I'll fix you dinner." Jack touched his hat in agreement. It took them an hour to sort things out. Claire walked at first, until he insisted she ride with him. She climbed up, awkward at first, but grateful. When they arrived, the old wooden sign creaked in the wind. Sable Creek Ranch, founded 1979. Jack helped her unload everything in silence. She asked, "You any good with tools?" "Depends on what you need." "Broken gate and a leaky roof. Want to work a few days?" He looked at her. "I don't stay long. Time's all I need." That night, Claire placed a plate of stew and cornbread on the table. Jack ate with the calm of someone who's grateful, but not needy. When she asked if he'd ever settled down anywhere, he answered, "I did. Long time ago. Now, I'm just looking for peace." She didn't press. She simply offered the guest room in the old bunkhouse. He thanked her and walked out under the moonlight. But before dawn, the sound of horses screaming shattered the silence. Claire grabbed the rifle and ran. In the barn, 3 shadows moved. One was already inside, and the sounds of a struggle echoed in the darkness. That's when she saw Jack. He moved with precision, taking one down, dodging another, and knocking the third out cold. When it was over, he was calming the horses. "You okay?" she asked, still breathless. "Better ask them," he replied, motioning to the fallen intruders. She stared at him. "Who are you, really?" "Jack," he said, without hesitation. But she wasn't so sure anymore. In the days that followed, Jack settled into the rhythm of the ranch as if he'd always belonged there. He was up before sunrise, helped feed the animals, repaired fences, and even did what few had managed before. Calm Dusty, Claire's most stubborn mare, with nothing but a whistle and steady hands. Claire, on the other hand, kept trying to figure him out. She'd ask casual questions, where he'd grown up, what brought him west, whether he'd ever trained horses professionally. But every answer came measured, controlled, as if he were building a wall while walking right beside her. One warm afternoon, the two sat on the porch. The sky was shifting slowly from gold to deep blue. Claire broke the silence. "My dad used to say land only matters if someone has the guts to stay and care for it." Jack watched the horizon. "You believe that?" she asked. He took a while to answer. "I believe the land remembers who builds and who runs." Claire turned to look at him. "And you? Which one are you?" Jack looked at her like he was really seeing her, for the first time. "I used to build, then I ran. Now, I'm trying to figure out who's left after that." Silence fell again. Then she risked another question. "You work so well with horses, because you love them, or because they listen better than people?" Jack gave a quiet laugh. "A bit of both," Claire smiled. "Ever thought of stopping somewhere for good?" He kept his eyes on the ground ahead. "Sometimes. Ever thought of stopping here?" Jack turned slowly to face her. "Would it matter?" She took a breath, barely noticing. "I don't let people in easily. Neither do I." Their eyes met, and for a second, there were no words. Just something quiet and real beginning to form, between cracks and scars. Then a familiar sound broke the moment, the low rumble of a truck climbing the gravel road. Claire stood up immediately, shoulders tense. Jack noticed the shift. Trouble, she nodded. Big trouble. The truck pulled up in front of the ranch, kicking up dust. Claire crossed her arms, steady. Jack stood at the porch railing. Out of the truck stepped Wes Carter, tall, tan, wearing a dress shirt that clashed with everything around him. His smile was polished and fake. "Claire," he said, walking up like he'd been invited. "Heard your truck broke down. Thought I'd help." "It's already been taken care of," she replied coolly. Wes's eyes met Jack's, who just watched him, unmoving, unblinking. "Friend of yours?" Wes teased. Claire stepped in. "He's helping out around here. That's all you need to know." Wes chuckled. "Is that so? Thought maybe you'd finally be ready to talk business. The offer still stands." "It never did," she snapped. "You just like to pretend it does." "Claire, you know you can't hold on to this place much longer. I can fix that." "I'm not selling, Wes." He stepped in closer, lowering his voice. "You sure? Because next time, I might not come asking." Jack stepped down a stair, his eyes cold. "You threatening her?" Wes turned. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jack didn't raise his voice. "You showed up uninvited. You're pushing. That sounds like a threat to me." Wes faltered for a second. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "No," Jack replied flatly. "But I know the type." Wes stepped in. "This ain't your business, cowboy." Jack took a step closer. "It is now." Claire stepped between them. "Enough. Both of you." Wes took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "You're gonna regret this, Claire. You always do." He climbed into the truck and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Jack stood still, watching the road until the dust settled. "You all right?" Claire nodded, but her hands were still clenched. "He's not gonna stop." Jack tightened his jaw, staring out at the land ahead. "Then neither will I." In the days that followed, Jack settled into life on the ranch as if he had always belonged there. He was up before sunrise, helped feed the animals, mended fences, and even did what few had ever managed before. He calmed Dusty, Claire's most stubborn mare, with nothing but a whistle and steady hands. Claire, on the other hand, kept trying to figure him out. She asked casual questions: where he grew up, what brought him out west, if he had ever trained horses professionally. But every answer came measured, guarded, like he was building a wall even as he walked beside her. One warm afternoon, the two of them sat on the porch. The sky slowly shifted from gold to deep blue. Claire broke the silence. "My dad used to say land is only worth something if someone's brave enough to stay and care for it." Jack stared out at the horizon. "Do you believe that?" she asked. He took a moment before answering. "I believe the land remembers who builds and who runs." Claire turned to face him. "And you? Which one are you?" Jack looked at her as if he was seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. "I used to build, then I ran. Now, I'm trying to figure out who's left after that." Silence returned for a beat. Then she asked gently, "Are you good with horses because you love them, or because they listen better than people?" Jack gave a quiet chuckle. "A bit of both." Claire smiled. "Ever thought about settling in one place?" He kept his eyes on the land ahead. "Sometimes." "Ever thought about settling here?" Jack slowly turned to face her. "Would it matter?" She took a breath, almost without realizing it. "I don't let people in easily." "Neither do I." Their eyes met, and for a second, there were no words. Just something quiet and real forming between them, amid cracks and scars. That's when a familiar sound broke the moment. The low rumble of a truck coming up the gravel road. Claire stood up immediately, her shoulders tense. Jack noticed the shift. "Trouble?" She nodded. "Big trouble." The truck stopped at the edge of the ranch, kicking up dust. Claire crossed her arms, standing firm. Jack stood at the porch rail, unmoving. Wes Carter stepped out, tall, suntanned, wearing a dress shirt that didn't belong in this landscape. His smile was polished and fake. "Claire," he said, walking up like he'd been invited. "Heard your truck broke down. Thought I'd come lend a hand." "Someone already did," she replied flatly. Wes's eyes found Jack's. Jack didn't move, didn't blink. "Friend of yours?" Wes asked, baiting. Claire stepped forward. "He's helping out here. That's all you need to know. Wes gave a low laugh. Is that right? I figured after everything you'd be ready to talk business. The offer still stands. It never did, she shot back. You just pretend it does. Claire, you know you won't keep this place much longer. I can fix that. I'm not selling, Wes. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You sure? Because next time I might not ask so nicely. Jack stepped down one stair, eyes cold. You threatening her? Wes turned toward him. Who the hell do you think you are? Jack didn't raise his voice. You showed up uninvited. You're pushing. Sounds like a threat to me. Wes faltered for a moment. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Maybe not, but I know you're kind, Jack said, straight. Wes stepped closer. This isn't your business, cowboy. Jack stepped forward again. It is now. Claire stepped between them. That's enough. Both of you. Wes exhaled sharply, trying to recover control. You're going to regret this, Claire. You always do. He got back into his truck and drove off, dust rising behind him. Jack stayed where he was, watching the road until the dust settled. You okay? Claire nodded, but her fists were still clenched. He's not going to stop. Jack clenched his jaw, eyes on the land ahead. Then neither will I. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She checked the locks 3 times, walked along the fence with a flashlight, jumped at every sound the wind carried. Jack spent hours in the barn, slowly sharpening a blade, his eyes fixed on the door like he knew something was coming. And it came. Shortly after midnight, a metallic crash tore through the silence. The horses neighed in panic. Claire was already running when Jack stepped out from the back of the barn, moving like a man who'd been trained for this his whole life. 2 men, hooded, were forcing the stall chains. Jack launched at the first one, bringing him down with brutal efficiency. The second pulled out a crowbar, tried to strike, but Jack ducked, twisted, grabbed the man's wrist and wrenched it until the metal fell. 1 punch. The man dropped unconscious. Claire arrived with the rifle in her hands, breathless. You okay? I'm fine, he said, breathing steady. These 2 aren't pros. Someone paid cheap for them. Wes, Claire growled. Jack knelt beside one of the unconscious men, checked his pockets, and pulled out a folded paper. No name. Just a rough map of the property, with one of the stalls marked with a red X. Claire went pale. They were going to take Dusty, sell her, ruin the ranch's name. Jack stood slowly. His eyes were cold now. He's not just trying to scare you. He wants to dismantle you, piece by piece. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the weight in her chest. I can't do this alone. Jack looked at her. You're not alone. The next morning, Claire found him reinforcing the fence with new barbed wire. She brought coffee, stood silently for a few seconds, then spoke. You didn't hesitate last night. Jack wiped his hands on his pants. Didn't need to think. You've lived this before. He didn't answer, but his silence said everything. Why hide it? He took a while before responding. Because the last time I fought for something, he said, voice low, I lost way more than I won. Claire swallowed hard, and this time, when he looked at her, there was something softer in his eyes. Still trying to figure out how to move forward after that, she placed the mug on the post beside him. Whatever it is, I just want you to know, I'm glad you're here. Jack nodded. Me too. But Claire knew, deep down, Wes wasn't finished. And Jack was starting to seem less like a wanderer and more like someone trained to survive invisible wars. It all started with a box, an old, rusty, forgotten one, hidden in the barn's attic among broken harnesses and tangled ropes. Claire was looking for blankets when she stumbled upon it, thinking it was just another piece of junk left behind by time. The box was heavy, with metal corners and a worn latch. When she opened it, a cloud of barn dust made her cough. Inside, neatly folded papers with yellowed edges were tied together with a leather strap. On top, an envelope. The name stamped on it made her blood run cold, J. Whitmore. It wasn't a name she heard often, but she knew who it was. Everyone did. Jack D. Whitmore, the silent investor behind one of the biggest land and energy expansions in the region. The man who, according to rumors, had built an empire and then simply vanished. He disappeared from the map after his fiancée tragically died in a plane crash. The press never found out the truth. There were theories, scandals, grief, guilt. Some said he lost everything. Others swore he had faked his own death. Claire stood frozen. Then she pulled the documents from the box. Deeds, property titles, contracts, lawyer letters, all with his name, Whitmore. Her heart raced. She hurried down from the attic, trembling hands, and went straight home. She had to be sure. She opened her old laptop, typed the name, and there he was, younger, clean-shaven, wearing a flawless suit. But the eyes were the same. Jack, the man now sleeping in the guest quarters, the same one helping with the stables, the one who held wild horses without a word, the same man she was starting to fall in love with. That afternoon, she found him in the pasture, walking alongside a young colt. Jack looked up as soon as she approached, as if he already knew. "You found it," he said quietly. Claire stood still, papers in hand, hurt in her eyes. "You lied to me." Jack sighed. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. You let me believe you were just a drifter with a quiet past. You let me trust you. I never asked for that," he said, without hostility. "But you knew I did." He nodded. "I knew." Claire paced, her voice trembling. "You're Jack Whitmore, the guy who disappeared when everything fell apart." "It didn't fall apart," he said. "I chose to leave it all behind." She stared at him. "Why?" Jack looked down, then back at her. "Because I thought I was building something that mattered, but when everything I built turned against me, all that was left was silence." The wind rustled the tall grass around them. Claire didn't speak. Jack stepped forward. "I didn't mean to fool anyone. I just wanted to be someone different for a while. Somewhere people didn't see me as money, failure, or a headline. Somewhere they'd see me as just a man with a hammer and a horse. And you let me see that. And I believed," she said, voice breaking. Claire looked down at the papers. "You told me you were running toward peace. But the truth is, Jack, you're still running, even here." "I know, and I'm sorry." She looked up. Her eyes burned. "I didn't care who you were, but I cared too much about who I thought you were. I'm still that man," he whispered. "I don't know who you are anymore." Claire turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing alone in the middle of the field. And for the first time in years, he understood the weight of being truly seen, and the cost of hiding. Claire left before the sky even began to lighten. No note, no looking back. The box with the documents remained on the kitchen table, silent, heavy, filled with truths she no longer wanted to face. She took only a backpack, got into the spare truck, and drove away from the ranch as if the air there no longer fit in her chest. She hated the name Jack Whitmore, because now it meant that everything she had felt, every spark of trust, of hope, had been born from a lie of omission. The man who saddled horses and fixed doors so calmly wasn't just Jack. He was a reclusive millionaire, a man who hid behind silence and dusty ground, letting her believe he was just another wandering stranger. At the edge of town, Claire rented a room in a cheap boarding house, trying to push the thoughts away. But the silence there was more suffocating than the one on the ranch. Later, walking through downtown, she stopped in front of the hardware store. She was about to keep walking when someone called her name. "Claire, did you see this?" It was an older farmer, Mr. Blevins, if she remembered right. He was holding a folded newspaper, eyes wide with concern. She took the paper. The headline was clear: "Families forced to sell. Carter expands control in the region." Wes Carter, the same man who had tried to intimidate her, the same man who swore she would regret it. The article was worse than the headline. It spoke of entire families who had accepted irresistible offers or disappeared after legal battles they couldn't afford. But what really turned Claire's stomach was the last line. "Construction set to begin in 3 months on the southern edge of Sable Creek." Her land, her home. Suddenly, everything made sense. The threats, the break-ins, the mark on the map. Wes didn't just want her ranch. He was taking over the entire valley, deed by deed. And she had walked away from the only person who just might be able to stop him. That night, the wind howled against the window of the small boarding house room. Claire sat at the desk, the folded newspaper beside her, and her dinner untouched. Images of Jack played through her mind like an old tape she couldn't rewind. The steadiness in his movements, the way he always rose before the sun, the scars on his hands, the weariness in his eyes. He hadn't lied out of malice. He had hidden to protect what little of himself remained. And she had run, not because he was another man, but because, maybe, he was the kind of man she could truly fall for. But now, love wasn't the question. Wes was winning, and Claire needed someone who didn't just care. She needed someone who knew how to fight. Before dawn, she turned back. The ranch was quiet. The front gate hung slightly open, the air heavy with dirt, horse manure, and something that smelled like return. She found him in the barn. Jack was brushing one of the colts, like nothing had fractured between them. Sleeves rolled up, steady steps, calm face. Claire didn't speak. She just stood there, watching. He turned slowly, and when their eyes met, there was no bitterness, no blame, just waiting. "I read the article," she said finally. He nodded. "He's moving faster than we thought. I left." "I know." A tense silence settled in. Claire swallowed hard. "I didn't come back for apologies or explanations." Jack watched her closely. "Then, why?" She took a deep breath. "Because I need you, not just the man who holds a wrench and keeps quiet. I need Jack Whitmore, the guy who built half this state, the man who can stop Wes before he burns down everything we still have." His eyes softened. "Are you sure?" "Number. But I know you never stopped protecting this place, even when no one was watching." He stepped closer. "And I never stopped wanting to protect you." Claire blinked quickly, holding back the tears. "So, what do we do now?" Jack pulled a folder from the bench beside him. On the cover, bold letters read, "Carter Development Group, Evidence Dossier." "We make a plan," he said. "And then, we make noise." They walked together toward the morning light. Wes had money, but they had a cause. And maybe, that was exactly what it would take to win. 3 days later, the old Cedar Hollow Community Center was more crowded than it had been for any meeting in the past decade. Jack stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, no tie, with the calm presence of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Behind him was a display of maps, deeds, and a web of connections linking shell companies, land transfers, and banking trails, all pointing to the same name, Wes Carter. Claire stood beside him, scanning the crowd. There were farmers, teachers, cattle ranchers, many afraid, others furious, but all tired of staying silent. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady but calm. "I know you might not have many reasons to trust me, but everyone here knows what Carter is offering isn't an opportunity. It's pressure. You felt it. I have too. And I know what happens when men like him go unchecked. I've seen it too many times, and I won't stand by anymore." He held up a bundle of papers. "These are formal injunction requests. I'll cover the costs. All you need to do is take a stand with me." The room fell silent. Then an elderly woman raised her hand. "Are you really Whitmore?" Jack nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She tilted her head. "Then why are you helping now?" Jack took a deep breath. "Because I didn't help before, and that was a mistake I don't intend to repeat." A murmur grew into motion. One by one, townsfolk rose, walked to the table in the back, and signed. By the end of the meeting, 25 names were on that list. Enough to halt Wes's project, for now. But everyone knew he wouldn't take it lightly. That night, Jack paced inside the barn, phone pressed to his ear. "The filing's in. Judge should issue the injunction by morning, which means Carter's cornered, unless he uses force." He hung up. Claire appeared at the door. "You think he'll try something?" Jack nodded. "He has to. It's the only move he knows." By midnight, the engines arrived. Lights, dust, tires crunching over gravel. "They're here," Claire said, stomach sinking. Jack handed her a flashlight and a radio. "Go out the back. Call the sheriff." "Now, I'm not leaving you. I'm not asking." She hesitated. Jack took a deep breath. "Then stay close." They slipped out the side of the barn, moving through the shadows. On the far side of the pasture, 3 pickup trucks pulled up. Armed men stepped out, sweeping flashlights across the land. Wes's voice rose, arrogant, mocking. "Come on, Jack. You and I both know this land's only worth something when someone bleeds for it." Jack stepped forward, shotgun low but ready. "You've made your move, Wes. Now walk away. You think paperwork's gonna stop me?" "Number, but witnesses will." Sirens approached in the distance. "You called the cops?" Number Claire did. She emerged from the shadows, rifle steady in her arms. "Back off, Wes." He stepped forward. The gunshot shattered the night. Wes dropped to his knees, clutching his side. His men scattered like rats in the dark. Claire rushed to Jack. "Are you okay?" Blood trickled from his temple, but he nodded. "Almost." Patrol cars arrived seconds later. Wes was arrested. Illegal weapons, assault attempt, trespassing. The ranch was safe. For now, the legal fight was only beginning. But the first battle was won, and they had won it together. Jack spent the following week moving more slowly. The cut on his temple was stitched up, his ribs bandaged. But Claire knew, some wounds don't show. She noticed in the way he lingered by the fence, watching the grass sway in the wind like he was somewhere else in time. In the quiet sighs he let out when he thought no one was watching. But he never complained, and she never left him alone. They returned to their routine as if nothing had broken. They fed the animals, walked the land, watered the small garden behind the barn together. But something was different, a lighter silence, a fuller presence. As if, finally, they knew they were on the same side. One golden afternoon, Claire found Jack sitting by the corral, brushing Dusty, the mare no one used to touch. His movements were slow, full of tenderness. "You're gonna spoil that one," Claire said, smiling as she approached. "She deserves it," he replied, running his hand along the mare's neck. "Sometimes we all do." Claire sat beside him on the bench, folding her hands in her lap. "Have you thought about what comes next?" she asked. Jack was silent for a moment. "Every day." He turned to her, gaze steady. "I used to think my role was to build things. Businesses, ventures, deals. But lately," he looked out at the horizon, where the sky had turned to hues of pink and amber. "Lately, all I want is to build something that lasts. Something simple, something true." Claire swallowed hard. "You already have." Jack then reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small box, worn at the edges. It wasn't velvet. It wasn't new. It was humble, like him. He opened it to reveal a silver ring, delicately engraved on the inside. Claire recognized the handwriting instantly. It was her mother's, from an old note she once left in the kitchen. He'd taken that phrase and had it carved inside. "Come home when you're ready." She held her breath. Jack didn't kneel, didn't deliver a grand speech. He simply looked at her with a gaze that was raw, unguarded, sincere. "I haven't truly loved in a long time," he said softly. "And I thought I never would again. Not where it really counts." Claire smiled through tears. "I don't need a church," he added, "or an audience. I just need you, and the sound of your boots on the porch every morning." She laughed, crying, and nodded. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it felt like it had always been waiting there for her. They stayed there for a while, side by side, as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. No rush, no loud promises, just two hearts deciding, with all the quiet certainty in the world, to choose each other. After the pain, after the fight, after everything, they had found their way home, and this time, they would stay. 1 year later, the hills of Sable Creek were blooming like they hadn't in decades. Spring had arrived, with gentle rains and golden afternoons, making wildflowers sprout where there once was only dry soil. The horses grazed peacefully, their manes dancing in the wind. And the ranch. The ranch had become more than just a home. It was a sanctuary. Claire stood on the porch, little Wren sleeping nestled against her chest, wrapped in a soft cloth. The girl had her father's steady gaze, and her mother's quiet stubbornness. She slept soundly, while Claire watched a group of young people learning to saddle horses under the guidance of 2 volunteers. In the field, Jack walked beside a boy of about 10, holding the reins of a calm mare. His steps were slower now, not from weakness, but from awareness, as if every movement carried intention. The boy laughed at something Jack said, and Jack ruffled his hair with a gentle smile. This was the legacy they had built after Carter's fall. In the months following the scandal, the community grew stronger. People who barely looked at each other in the street now worked side by side. The ranch had become a support center, offering equine therapy for veterans, at-risk youth, and grieving families. Jack never put his name on anything. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to give back. Claire stepped carefully down the porch stairs, shielding Wren's head with her hand. Jack saw her from across the fence and smiled, that calm smile that still undid her inside. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "You're late for breakfast, Mr. Whitmore," she replied. They met halfway. He kissed her forehead, then peeked at their daughter. Sleeping like her dad after a day fixing fences. Fair enough. They walked side by side, the golden morning light warming the ground beneath their feet. At the ranch's entrance, a sign swayed gently in the breeze. Recently sanded, lovingly repainted, fixed to the same post Claire's father had planted years before. The new name carved in wood, Whitmore Ridge, where we begin. Again, Jack paused and looked at the sign, letting out a long sigh. "Do you think your father would have approved?" Claire nodded. "He would have respected you." Jack looked at her, his eyes soft. "It took me a long time to earn that." She took his hand. "You earned it the moment you chose to stay." They stood there for a while, the wind rustling through the trees, their daughter between them, and life pulsing all around. They had lost a lot, but they had rebuilt even more. Not with steel, not with fortune, but with truth, with patience, with the daily choice not to give up on each other. The sun rose over the hills as Claire looked at Jack and smiled. "Shall we ride?" He nodded, and together, with Wren nestled against her mother's chest, they saddled 2 horses and rode slowly to the top of the ridge. The same ridge where Jack had once stood alone, thinking he would never belong anywhere. But now, from up there, he looked out, not as a ghost of who he once was, but as a husband, as a father, as a man who had finally come back to life, exactly where he was always meant to be. Because the strongest love stories don't begin with perfect starts. They are born from broken pieces, mended with steady hands and quiet hearts. Jack and Claire hadn't just found each other. They had rebuilt themselves and created a home that couldn't be bought. It had to be built. Because real love, true love, isn't about who you were. It's about who you choose to become, beside the one who stayed.